Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. Glad you could be here on our topic of pandemic impact and its impact on broadband providers for upstream usage. Last week, we released a white paper, a special report. This was after we had done our quarterly OpenVault Broadband Insights report, and a deeper dive showed dramatic increase in upstream usage. And that showed us, basically, as you see here, the conclusion that spurred by homebound workers, students, and families, upstream consumption rose by 63% in 2020, which is 350% of historic growth rates. This had negative implications for operators, which would include such effects as service disruptions, upstream speeds that don't meet subscribers' expectations and needs, higher volumes of interaction with customer care, increased numbers of unnecessary truck rolls as field techs visit subscriber homes, especially troublesome during this pandemic, and unexpected expenses for equipment. I'm Larry Siegel with OpenVault, and I'll be hosting today and presenting a lot of the impact and what providers can do about it will be our CEO, Mark Trudeau. OpenVault, just a few words about us. If you're not aware, we're a 10-year-old company specializing in proprietary solutions for broadband operators. We provide actionable insight and tools based on usage analytics. We've provided these solutions for over 150 operators in North America, Latin America, and Europe, and we've helped those operators improve annual revenues by hundreds of millions of dollars, and we do so for more operators than any other broadband solutions vendor in the world. We're focused exclusively on broadband providers. Now, the white paper I talked about is available on our website, openvault.com. You're free to download it and do a little deep dive as well. And if this is something that you're interested in and solving, get in touch with us. We also have a case study that we can provide you with, as well as more information, because we do have a solution that we want to talk about. Shortly, we're going to go over the key findings and implications that I referenced. What are some of the remedies that exist for providers? What are the outcomes once those remedies are executed? What's the best way to move forward? And then we'll entertain any questions and answers that you have. Feel free to use the Zoom tool to put any questions in there. We'll try to get to as many as we can. So at this point, going into key findings and implications, we'll turn it over to Mark Trudeau.
Thank you, Larry, and good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to our friends in Europe that have joined the webinar here today. We're just going to jump right in. Unlike if you've seen some of our quarterly OBBI webinars, we spend a lot more time kind of discussing how we collect the data, et cetera. Most of you on the phone today have either participated in those or are familiar with what we do. But we're just going to jump right into the data and what it's telling us, because as you can see here, this is a picture of upstream usage per household that we've observed between 2019 and 2020. So no surprise, in March and April in particular of 2020, with all the lockdowns occurring across the world, we saw really nearly double the upstream usage per household that we saw the year prior, from 15 gigabytes per household up to 27. Now that did seem to settle back down as we entered the summer months a bit, but towards the end of the third quarter and certainly into the all the way through the end of the year, we started to see that seasonality again, albeit at much higher levels of usage, ending the year at even higher than we saw in April at 31 gigabytes per household. So upstream usage has continued to grow. And in fact, as we've examined what's occurred in Q1 of 2021, those levels remain at very high, highly elevated levels of usage per household. So now this has clearly put a lot of strain on these networks, and upstream in particular. For many of you that are on the call know that there's much more limited capacity when it comes to the upstream plant. And this, just for illustration, is an example of an operator who had a number of their MAC domains or nodes exceeding 80% utilized the year prior to the pandemic. Actually, February 22 2020, about a month prior to the pandemic really taking hold, and then where we are in February 21. And you could see that really the amount of what we'd call congested nodes has tripled on this particular network. And again, this is for illustration, but very, very common across all the networks that we work with. The fact that upstream is causing a lot of strain on these networks. And what we have found doing this for quite some time is that once nodes reach 80% utilization, it becomes very subscriber impacting in a negative way. Subscribers really start to feel it. They're not getting the bandwidth that they expect or that they're paying for. So this is clearly an area of focus for operators. Upstream has, between video calling and all the upstream reliance these days, it's causing a lot of customer service issues. So the result is certainly, as Larry pointed out up front, more phone calls into customer care, more requests for field techs and truck rolls, right? And that's all causing an increase in operating expenses. It's also causing unplanned expense with network upgrades, et cetera. So significant impact to the providers due to the upstream growth caused largely by the pandemic. Now there's some good news, and this is where we're going to dive into the data a little bit. And the good news is when you really look at the data, there seems to be a much higher density of a few subscribers causing issues at peak time. So the way to look at this chart is the top 1% of subscribers really are accounting for about a third of all usage, okay, during those times of peak congestion. Now, when you just look at it over on the left over the course of a month, they only represent 9% of total usage. There's a much greater distribution of usage, if you will, over the course of a whole month. But during those highly congested times, it's really just a small subset of customers causing the issues. And this is actually good news, which I'll get into in a second. It becomes even more prominent when we look at the top 5%, actually accounting for close to 2/3 of all usage at peak. Now, again, we're talking about shared networks here where a single node could be serving 200 or 300 or more subscribers. And literally just the top 5%, the top 10 or 15 subscribers are chewing up 2/3 of available bandwidth, causing issues for everybody else on that part of the network. And I'll repeat this down the line a little bit, but when this is occurring, when there's congestion on a network, it has the effect of all subscribers on that network effectively being throttled. They are not getting the bandwidth that they're paying for. They're not getting the bandwidth that they expect. So many operators are afraid to take action with things like policy enforcement, et cetera, on just a few subscribers, when in actuality, if you don't do it, you're actually taking action on all subscribers when there's congestion. So this is an important point to make out. And I'm actually going to illustrate this on a live network here really quick. I'm going to shift gears and share our products so you can see what this looks like in a real situation. So we've got our product dashboard here, and what we're going to do is we're going to dive into this operator's network. In particular, we're going to show you, look at an hourly report here. So what we're going to do is go back a day. We're going to pick yesterday, and we're going to look at about 2 p.m., let's say. And what's going to happen is this data is going to refresh, and we're going to see very, very high utilization levels during that particular hour, okay? And you can see the average utilization here during the hour is well over 80%. We're in the 90s. Okay, so now I'm going to drill down into that particular service group, and it's serving 382 subscribers. But when I scroll down, and by the way, this data is correlating network utilization data. It's taking usage data for every subscriber on that part of the network, and it's telling us who are the top talkers, if you will, who are the biggest contributors to congestion at this time. And if you look, the top 5 subscribers here, if if you add up their contribution in this hour, it's actually they're accounting for 25% or more of the total usage out of 382 subscribers. So you have an option as operators to take action on just those top 5 subscribers in order to provide better service for the other 382, or leave it the way it is, and then all 382 subscribers are negatively impacted. This is what's driving phone calls. It's what's driving truck rolls, etc. So again, this is a real live network, and we can see what I was talking about as far as a very high density when we pick a peak hour. All right, so I'm going to head back to our presentation and talk about a few different remedies for this. So when we see this situation, right, we often see even sometimes just one subscriber who might be accounting for, we've seen it as high as 80% of available bandwidth during a peak hour. Obviously, that's an abusive subscriber. It's a subscriber whose usage habits are actually negatively impacting everybody else on that part of the network. So one of the remedies that operators put in place is when they see congestion, their immediate response is, let's just do a node or mid split. And what happens is they split the node. Well, has the issue really gone away? No, because that one subscriber who's, again, we'll call him an abuser for now, is still on that part of the network that was split. So they're still causing issues for everybody else. They're not changing their usage behavior because you split a node. So that node split is not always necessarily the best approach, but yet you've probably spent $20,000, $30,000 or euros to do that node split. And it effectively has been somewhat ineffective for a good chunk of subscribers. Another option is you could run potentially a direct fiber line to that customer. Get them off the shared part of the network, if that's even feasible in your plan. So that's an option. Now, we at OpenVault prefer what we call our dynamic capacity management solution. And what this involves is certainly collecting data. As you saw, we're collecting a lot of data in real time directly from the network. So we can see individual subscriber usage data. We correlate that with unique billing and package information from the CRM or billing system, along with real-time network capacity statistics. All of this data is aggregated together, analyzed automatically in real time in order to identify, in this case, where there are upstream congestion points and specific usage violators, those users in rank order who are causing this congestion. And then the solution will apply an automated policy enforcement action in order to bring those subscribers that are causing the issue, bring their bandwidth down for a temporary period of time in order to reduce congestion and effectively open up the pipe for all other subscribers on that part of the network. But a high level, that's what we're doing. Now, here's just an example of what that will do for you. To use a phrase that's really been used a lot, certainly in the past year, we're looking to flatten the curve. We're looking to bring those utilization levels down below our predefined threshold, which typically are set at around 80%. We'd like to see utilization stay below that level. So by automatically triggering policy, you can see in this chart, these are 3 different nodes. You can see that the lower line is actually post-policy deployment, showing just how much the utilization curve has come down once policies being enforced. And again, this particular policy is being triggered when we see utilization at 80% or higher. It's identifying the top subscribers causing congestion, and it's automatically bringing their bandwidth down for a temporary period of time. It's not doing it unless the utilization level has exceeded the threshold that we've established. So you're not touching subscribers ever if the network is healthy. You're only doing this in an automated fashion if we see the network is unhealthy, causing quality of service issues for a good chunk of customers. Another way to look at this is just looking at the amount of MAC domains that exceed 80%. So for this particular operator, the blue represents what that looked like prior to policy being turned on. And then once policy was invoked and was deployed, you can see the reduction in just the amount of MAC domains or nodes that were exceeding 80%. So it had certainly the desired effect, resulting in some very actually positive results, which we'll get into. Some of those are, you certainly have fewer subscribers impacted by capacity constraints. Again, everybody on a congested node is potentially not getting what they're paying for. Their bandwidth expectations are not being met. So here, we've actually impacted far fewer subscribers by deploying this solution. It resulted in fewer phone calls and truck rolls. And I'm going to show you a specific case study in a second that illustrates this specifically. It created extra capacity, room for upgrades and revenue growth. We often see operators who have congested parts of their network. There's really no dialogue between sales and marketing and the network group. Sales and marketing is out there doing their job, selling gig services. They're getting more and more subscribers online, but these customers are coming online in parts of the network that are already congested, and that's causing further issues. So if we can bring down utilization by impacting a small group of people, again, it creates more bandwidth for more customers. It gives you an opportunity to upgrade customers who probably need, during this day and age, their behavior has changed. They probably need faster speeds, and that's going to drive more revenues as well. So there's a positive revenue impact to this type of deployment too. And certainly the ability to defer, not forever, right? I mean, usage is continuing to rise. There's going to constantly have to be a focus on increasing capacity, but certainly you can extend the life of some of these congested parts of your network by deploying this type of solution, deferring those CapEx costs, making sure that you have the right prioritization of which nodes to split, which is really dependent on diving into that node and understanding the specific usage profile of the customers at peak time. It's not enough anymore to say, well, I'm seeing a bunch of phone calls from this part of the network, so it must be congested, I'm gonna have to go split the node. There's an opportunity here to do much better, smarter planning and putting that in place. Now, specifically, this is an example of a real customer experience. About 100,000 subscribers and a regional broadband provider here that was really affected heavily by the spike that they saw in upstream usage. They faced crippling congestion, resulting in a significant increase in phone calls, field tech visits at a time when field techs didn't want to go out into the field, and certainly subscribers didn't want people coming into their homes. And they were all of a sudden faced with a bunch of unplanned network investments just to try to keep up with the demand. They deployed our solution, and you can see the results. I won't go through all the bullet points, but a 17% reduction in truck rolls was observed post deployment, and a 20% reduction in calls into customer care. So essentially, customers were happier. They weren't having negative experiences causing phone calls and truck rolls, et cetera, because we took a very surgical approach to identifying just those subscribers causing issues and taking action just on them, as opposed to impacting everybody, which is what congestion does. So that's a real life example. We get questions a lot when we talk to operators. What does this take to deploy? So we'll talk about that for a second. This is a 100% cloud-based solution. There's no equipment that has to sit inside your network. All right, it's quick to deploy and configure. It doesn't take an army of resources from the operator perspective. This is not a huge project. Oftentimes we work with one engineer, two engineers in an operator's environment to get this deployed. It comes with immediate impacts, positive impacts in terms of cost and time, et cetera. It's very flexible, and you see the point down there at the bottom right. We filed patents for this around the flexibility of the solution, the ability to, for example, assign different policies based on the package plan that the subscriber has. You might have VIP customers, you might have commercial customers that you don't want to touch with policy. Maybe you don't want to use policy on a 1 gig customer. You have complete flexibility with who actually receives policy. You also are really effectively, I talked about the fact that you will eventually have to split a node. You're going to have to spend money, obviously, in the long term to expand capacity on your network. This provides that bridge. It extends the life of this part of the network, allows you to focus in the worst areas first, and defers the need to spend a lot of money today in other areas of the network. And really, when you think about it, this is the fairest share delivery service, which is obviously something broadband operators want to do. Is it's a shared service. They want to provide this fair share environment. It's not fair if one or two subscribers are causing issues. It's much more fair to try to do what you can with a small group of customers to open up the pipe for the larger group. So at the end of the day, you're improving your net promoter scores. Customers are happier, customer satisfaction is improved, and there's evidence of that just by the simple fact that you're not getting the phone calls and the truck rolls you might have previously. So to kind of wrap this up a little bit and give you a picture of what the objectives are when we do this. So one, we talked about easing congestion, extending the life of your nodes using this dynamic capacity management solution, because it's taking a surgical approach. It's a very smart way of doing it. You're impacting as few subscribers as possible, right? We do a lot of analytics and a lot of modeling with this for our customers to really look at, is it the top 1%? Is it the top 5%? What's the right number of customers to hit with policy and policy enforcement? But the goal is always to impact as few as possible so that you can provide the best service to as many subscribers as possible. And that's that next bullet there. Improving the quality of experience for the vast majority of your subscribers. It takes continuous monitoring. So we're tied into your network and we're looking at this 24/7. But again, we're not triggering anything until the network conditions dictate that policy is required, policy enforcement is required. And that's all automatic. So you see that final bullet, the solution is automatically triggered in as near real time as possible, but it's also automatically terminated when the network conditions dictate. So in other words, utilization levels now fall below our threshold. We're going to release all those policies. We're going to revert all those subscribers to their original provision bandwidth speeds. And it's all going to be done in an automated way. There's nothing manual here. And there's full visibility so that both engineering and if you want customer care, they all have access to whether policy is being enforced or not on an individual subscriber. But would they rather get phone calls from 2 or 3 abusive subscribers or 300 subscribers that are being impacted by network congestion? So that's really, in a nutshell, what we're trying to solve and what we are solving with this solution. So with that, I think we have some questions that came in. I'm going to turn it back over to Larry.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, we did get some questions in. The first one, here you go, strap yourself in, here it comes. Question number 1. How does this solution impact net neutrality?
Very good question. Before I answer that, I'm going to give the caveat and the disclaimer that I am not an attorney. We are not attorneys here at OpenVault. We have our own interpretation, but we certainly strongly suggest you seek your own legal counsel on this. But in our experience and discussions that we have had around net neutrality, and for those of you familiar with it, typically net neutrality is more focused on treating different applications differently. So here, when we reduce somebody's speed, we are not really treating any application differently from any other. We are just shrinking the size of the pipe going into their home or establishment. So in our views and in the views of any of our customers that have deployed this, this is not in any way a net neutrality violation to deploy this type of solution.
Thank you. Next question. Is dynamic capacity management consistent with acceptable use policies?
Again, same caveat, not an attorney, and recommend you seek out your legal counsel on this issue. But all of our customers that have deployed this have looked into this, and most have found that their existing acceptable use policies provide room to do this. You have the ability, in most cases, in the acceptable use policies that are out there, to manage your network. If you see abusive usage that's causing issues for other subscribers on the network, you have the rights within those acceptable use policies to take action on those customers. So most that have looked into this, most of our customers have not seen a need to modify or add any language to their already existing acceptable use policies.
Thank you. A couple more. You mentioned it's a cloud-based solution. What other benefits can I get from the system once I put this in? Is it just for policy enforcement, or do I get something else in addition?
Yeah, good question. So I think I'll just provide a little more detail. So what we're doing in a cable DOCSIS environment, and it's a little different for fiber. We're tied into an OLT in a fiber environment. And the DOCSIS environment, we're tied directly to the CMTS. So what we're doing is we're working with the operators to configure the CMTS to push IPDRs to our cloud instance, where we're collecting, processing. And by the way, this can be an on-premises deployment as well. Most of our customers prefer the cloud-based approach, but it can be on-prem too. But those CMTSs are pushing IPDR records to us on a consistent basis. We're also doing an S&MP poll of interface utilization statistics every 5 minutes. It's not a big S&MP poll like some might experience in their networks. We're really just collecting network utilization statistics on a consistent basis. We're aggregating that with subscriber data files that we're receiving from the operator's billing or CRM system. Bring all that data together in one place in the cloud, processing that data and deploying our solution using, again, in the DOCSIS world, we're using packet cable multimedia to manage the bandwidth at the subscriber level. And we've got a complete process in place to help operators get all that deployed. This whole process does take a matter of a week or two, as opposed to months. We're not talking about a 3-month project or anything. This is a very quick deployment. And again, the most popular deployment is cloud-based, so there's no network equipment. There's nothing that has to sit inside the operator's network. It's a very lightweight solution. So I think, Larry, I think that might answer the question.
I think it does. Another question. Are you seeing upstream usage differences in the US, Europe, and Latin America among those? And is the solution we talked about available outside the US?
Well, the last question first, it's absolutely available. Really on a global basis, we have customers in those different regions that you mentioned. We are seeing what I would say are different levels of usage in each region, but the growth and the rate of growth is significant across the board. So we're seeing the impacts of that. We're seeing congestion issues in almost every operator that we work with on this upstream side of the house. So no, there are very real similarities in how usage behavior is changing on a global basis, and the impacts to the networks is consistent, and the solution can be deployed really in any environment from that standpoint.
Great, thank you. We are up against the time. If you asked a question we didn't get to you, we will reach out to you individually. We see the questions here, so thank you for that. And with that, that'll take us to our closing slide. Appreciate your attendance. Hope this was of value to you. We definitely think we can make a difference in your networks, and get in touch with us at openvault.com and enjoy the rest of your day.